The village of New Haven was known for its peaceful routine. Nestled on the edge of a vast forest, it was a place where time moved slowly, marked by the ringing of blacksmith hammers, the chirping of sparrows, and the laughter of children playing in the streets. Yet on that fateful evening, peace was shattered by an otherworldly sound, a hum that seemed to rise from the very ground, carrying with it a strange electric vibration. Ardan, the village blacksmith, stood at the anvil, his hands blackened with soot and sweat as he shaped molten iron into a sturdy horseshoe. The hum was faint at first, barely noticeable over the rhythmic clanging of his hammer, but it grew louder, resonating in his chest and causing the tools in his workshop to tremble. "Earthquake," he muttered, glancing at the swinging lantern overhead. But the light's steady sway betrayed no such disturbance. Wiping his hands on a rag, he stepped out into the crisp evening air, the hum now unmistakable. Villagers had gathered in clusters, pointing toward the forest, where a faint pulsating glow lit up the treetops. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Did you see it? Some sort of falling star?" No, it was slower, deliberate, almost. Ardan frowned, his curiosity piqued despite himself. He wasn't one for village gossip, but something about the glow tugged at his gut. Taking a lantern and a sturdy walking stick, he headed toward the woods, ignoring the hesitant warnings of his neighbors. "Careful, Ardan. Could be something dangerous. Or someone needing help," he replied curtly, striding into the darkness. The forest was alive with sounds, crickets chirping, leaves rustling in the breeze, but all seemed muted under the hum that guided him. His lantern's flickering light danced over twisted roots and gnarled trunks as he pushed deeper into the woods. Then he saw it. A sleek metallic structure lay nestled in a clearing, its surface shimmering as if alive. The hum emanated from the vessel, softening as he approached. It looked damaged, with scorch marks and dents marring its otherwise smooth exterior. Before Ardan could take another step, a figure emerged from the ship, and he froze. She was unlike anything he had ever seen. Her skin glimmered faintly, a silvery hue that reflected the moonlight, and her long flowing hair seemed to ripple like liquid gold. Her eyes, large and glowing violet, locked onto him, filled with equal parts weariness and exhaustion. She was tall, with a lithe frame that moved gracefully despite the tension in her posture. For a moment neither spoke, the hum of the ship filling the silence. Then she raised a hand, palm outward, and spoke in a language that sounded like wind chimes and whispers. Ardan took a cautious step forward, lowering his lantern to appear less threatening. "I don't understand," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Are you hurt? Do you need help?" The woman tilted her head, her eyes narrowing slightly as if trying to decipher his words. Slowly, she gestured to herself. "Kalara," she said, her voice melodic yet tinged with uncertainty. "Kalara," Ardan repeated, nodding. He placed a hand on his chest. "Ardan." She mimicked his gesture, a faint smile gracing her lips. But her gaze quickly shifted to her ship, and she let out a series of soft, mournful sounds. "Your craft?" Ardan guessed, glancing at the damaged vessel. "Is it broken?" She nodded, her expression pained, and gestured toward the forest floor, where strange tools lay scattered. She picked one up and held it out to him, motioning as if to ask for his assistance. "I'm no expert in whatever this is," he said, taking the tool cautiously, "but I can try." Helping Kalara repair her ship was an exercise in patience and ingenuity. The tools she used were unlike anything Ardan had ever handled, lightweight yet unyielding, emitting faint hums when activated. Despite the language barrier, they managed to establish a system of gestures and nods, working side by side in the glow of her ship. As the hours passed, Ardan couldn't help but notice the small details about her, The way her hands moved with precision, her fingers almost dancing over the alien equipment, the soft rhythmic hum she made under her breath as if lost in thought. Her presence was both calming and unsettling, a paradox he couldn't quite reconcile. By the time the first hints of dawn painted the sky, Kalara let out a soft sigh, sitting back on her heels. She gestured to the ship and then made a motion with her hands as if to say, "Not enough." "You need more time," Ardan interpreted, rising to his feet and offering her a hand. "Come with me. You can rest at my place while you figure things out." Kalara hesitated, her violet eyes searching his for any hint of malice. Finding none, she nodded and took his hand, her touch cool and feather-light. The sight of Kara entering the village at dawn sent a ripple through the community. Children peeked from behind their mothers, and men whispered among themselves, their gazes wary. "She's with me," Ardan said firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. He led her to his workshop, a modest building that doubled as his home. Inside, Kara explored the space with quiet fascination, running her fingers over tools, metals, and the sturdy wooden table where Ardan did his work. She paused at a shelf lined with small trinkets, souvenirs from the blacksmith's travels, and picked up a tiny carved bird. Ardan watched her with a mixture of amusement and curiosity. "That's from the northern woods," he explained, though he knew she wouldn't understand. "Took me a week to carve it." Kara held the bird close, her expression softening. She turned to him, her lips curving into a smile that felt like the first rays of sunlight breaking through clouds. As days turned into weeks, Kara settled into life in New Haven. The villagers, though initially cautious, grew accustomed to her presence, especially after she began helping with small tasks, her alien abilities proving surprisingly useful. She could sense faults in structures, detect spoiled food, and even calm frightened animals with a single touch. Despite her growing integration, Kara remained closest to Ardan. They spent long hours together in the workshop, her fascination with his craft evident in the way she watched him work. In turn, Ardan found himself drawn to her quiet strength, her curious nature, and the way she seemed to carry an entire world's worth of stories in her violet eyes. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Kara approached Ardan while he was hammering a blade. She held something in her hands, an intricate crystal pendant that seemed to pulse faintly with its own inner light. "For you," she said, her voice soft but resolute. Ardan took the pendant, marveling at its beauty. "It's incredible. Did you make this?" Kara nodded, her smile tinged with something deeper, something he couldn't quite place. "Thank you," he said, slipping the pendant into his pocket. "It's beautiful." Her smile widened, but her eyes held a flicker of something unspoken. As the evening wore on, Ardan placed the pendant on his nightstand before drifting off to sleep, unaware of the bond he had just forged with the alien woman who had become an irreplaceable part of his life. The following morning, Ardan awoke to the soft hum of sunlight filtering through his window. The crystal pendant Kara had given him sat where he'd left it on the nightstand, its faint glow pulsing with a steady rhythm. He reached for it, holding it up to the light. The intricate patterns etched into its surface seemed to shift and shimmer as though alive. He felt a strange warmth in his chest when he touched it, a comforting sensation that spread to his fingertips. Kara's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She stood at the doorway, her expression soft yet expectant. "You wear," she said, her tone firm despite the language barrier. "I wear it," Ardan repeated, uncertain. Kara nodded, gesturing to the pendant and then to his neck. She mimed tying it around herself, her gaze unwavering. Not wanting to offend her, Ardan looped the pendant's cord over his head. As soon as the crystal rested against his chest, he felt a sudden rush of energy, warm and all-encompassing. Images flickered through his mind. Kara standing alone in a dark place, her hands reaching toward a distant light. He staggered slightly, clutching the table for support. What is this?" he asked, his voice unsteady. Kara's eyes shimmered with a mix of emotions, hope, relief, and something deeper. She placed a hand over her heart and then pointed to his, speaking in her melodic tongue. Ardan shook his head, confused but strangely calm. "I don't understand." Kara frowned, her delicate brows furrowing as she searched for the right words. Finally, she spoke haltingly, her voice deliberate. "Gift, connection, life." "Connection?" Ardan echoed. She nodded emphatically, then placed her hands together as if binding them. Ardan felt the weight of her words, but couldn't grasp their full meaning. He chose to let the matter rest, assuming it was a gesture of gratitude. Yet a nagging feeling lingered in the back of his mind. Over the following days, Ardan noticed subtle changes. The pendant's glow seemed to sync with his heartbeat, and he often found himself inexplicably aware of Kara's presence, even when she wasn't nearby. One evening, as they worked on reinforcing a plough for a farmer, Kara suddenly gasped, clutching her chest. Ardan felt it too, a sharp pang in his heart that vanished as quickly as it came. He rushed to her side. "Kalara, are you all right?" She nodded, her breathing steadying, but her expression was distant, almost guilty. "What's happening to me?" Ardan demanded, his voice edged with frustration. Kalara hesitated, then took his hand and placed it over the pendant. Her other hand rested on her own chest. "Same," she said softly, her violet eyes filled with meaning. "Same? You mean we're connected?" She nodded, her gaze unwavering. The realization sent a chill down Ardan's spine. Whatever bond the pendant had forged between them was more profound than he had imagined. That night, Ardan couldn't sleep. The weight of the pendant seemed heavier, the warmth it emitted more intense. He lay staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment since Kara's arrival. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at his door. "Come in," he called, sitting up. Kalara entered, her golden hair catching the moonlight. She hesitated at the threshold, her hands clasped in front of her. "Kalara?" She stepped closer, her movements graceful yet uncertain. Sitting on the edge of his bed, she reached out and touched the pendant. Her touch sent a wave of warmth through him, calming and soothing. "Ardan," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "Gift." "More." "More?" he asked, his brow furrowing. She nodded, then began to explain in fragmented words, her hands weaving through the air as if to fill the gaps in her language. The pendant, she explained, wasn't just a token of gratitude. It was a bond, a declaration of unity between two beings. On her world, such a gift was sacred, signifying a promise of partnership, trust, and lifelong connection. By accepting it, Ardan had unknowingly accepted her proposal of marriage. Ardan's breath caught in his throat. "Marriage?" Kalara nodded, her expression earnest. "But I didn't know. I didn't—" He stopped himself, seeing the vulnerability in her eyes. She had given the gift in earnest, believing he understood its significance. Kalara tilted her head, her voice soft but insistent. "You accept?" Ardan opened his mouth, struggling for words. The logical part of him wanted to refuse, to explain the misunderstanding. But as he looked into her eyes, filled with hope and uncertainty, he felt a strange pull. The connection between them, forged by the pendant, was undeniable. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Kalara, I don't know what this means for us. I didn't realize what I was agreeing to, but I don't want to hurt you." Her lips curved into a small, hopeful smile. "Together," she said simply, placing her hand over his heart. Ardan felt the warmth again, spreading through him like a gentle flame. Against all reason, he found himself nodding. Together. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Kalara's integration into Ardan's life deepened, their bond growing stronger with each passing moment. Villagers began to notice the way they moved in sync, their unspoken understanding. For Ardan, it was both exhilarating and terrifying. He had lived a solitary life, finding comfort in his routine and the quiet forge. Now he was bound to an alien woman whose presence had upended everything he thought he knew. One evening, as they sat under the stars, Kalara turned to him, her gaze thoughtful. "Ardan," she said, her voice softer than usual. "Yes? Your world, your people, accept us." He hesitated, unsure how to answer. The villagers had been tolerant so far, but he couldn't predict how they would react to the full truth of their bond. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I'll stand by you no matter what." Kalara's smile was radiant, her hand slipping into his. The connection between them pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and unbreakable. Neither of them realized the challenges they would soon face, as the bond that had brought them together would also test the very foundations of their lives. Life in the village settled into an uneasy rhythm. While some villagers were curious about Kalara, others eyed her with suspicion, their fear of the unknown outweighing their tolerance. Ardan had always been respected as the village blacksmith, but now he found himself the subject of whispers. Kalara, for her part, navigated this new world with an open heart. She worked alongside Ardan in the forge, her strength and agility proving invaluable. But it was her otherworldly creativity that amazed him. She devised unique designs for tools and ornaments, blending her culture's elegance with human practicality. The creations quickly became popular, drawing villagers to the forge in cautious admiration. But not everyone was won over. One afternoon, as Ardan hammered away at a blade, Kalara stepped into the market to trade. The moment she approached a stall, conversation ceased, and all eyes turned to her. She greeted the vendor with a gentle smile, but he leaned back, his expression wary. "I don't deal with her kind," he muttered. Kalara's smile faltered, her glowing eyes dimming slightly. Before she could respond, a young boy tugged at her sleeve, pointing to the colorful crystals she carried. His mother yanked him back sharply, her tone cold. "Don't touch her." Kalara stood frozen, the crystals trembling in her hand. From across the square, Ardan noticed the commotion. He abandoned his work and strode toward her, his face dark with anger. "Is there a problem here?" he demanded. The vendor shrugged. "We don't know what she is. Could be dangerous." "Dangerous?" Ardan scoffed. "She's done nothing but help this village. Those tools you're so eager to buy, she helped design them." "She's not one of us," the vendor shot back, his voice low but firm. Ardan glanced at Kalara, who stood silent, her head bowed. The sight of her shrinking under their scrutiny filled him with a protective rage. "She's with me," he said, his voice ringing with finality. "And if anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with me." The tension hung in the air like a storm cloud, but no one dared challenge him. As Ardan led Kalara away, her hand brushed his arm. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice laced with sadness. That evening, Ardan found Kalara sitting by the river behind his house, the pendant glowing faintly against her chest. She traced patterns in the water with her fingers, her expression distant. He approached cautiously, sitting beside her. "I'm sorry for what happened," he said. "People here, they're not used to anything different." Kalara turned to him, her violet eyes shimmering with unspoken emotion. "Not your fault. I should have prepared them better, explained things. Not easy." She tilted her head, considering her words. Fear, strong, hard to break. Ardan sighed. They'll come around. I'll make sure of it. Kalara hesitated, then reached for his hand. You always protect. He met her gaze, the connection between them pulsing through the pendant. Always. For a moment they sat in silence, the river's gentle flow filling the air. Then Kalara leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. Ardan, why accept? Accept what? Gift, bond, me. The question caught him off guard. He had spent days grappling with the same thought, unsure if he had truly made a choice or simply been swept along by fate. Yet as he looked at her now, her strength, her vulnerability, her unwavering trust in him, the answer felt clearer. Because I care about you, he said finally, and because I can't imagine not having you here. Kalara's lips curved into a soft smile, her hand tightening around his. Same, she said, her voice filled with quiet certainty. The days grew colder as autumn settled over the village, and Kalara's presence became both a comfort and a challenge. While some villagers began to warm to her, others remained hostile, their distrust manifesting in subtle ways, whispered comments, reluctant dealings, and sidelong glances. One evening, as Ardan closed up the forge, a group of men approached him. Their leader, a burly farmer named Rek, crossed his arms and scowled. "We need to talk," Rek said, his tone heavy with accusation. Ardan wiped his hands on a cloth, his patience already thin. "About what?" "Her," Rek spat. "She's not natural. That glow, those eyes. She's dangerous." Ardan straightened, his gaze steady. "She's done nothing to harm anyone." "Yet," Rek countered. "What happens when she does? What if she's spying or planning something worse?" "You're letting your fear blind you," Ardan said, his voice calm but firm. "Kalara only ever wanted to help." Rek stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening growl. "We won't let her bring trouble to this village." Ardan's jaw tightened. "You won't touch her." Rek sneered but backed off, his companions muttering among themselves. "Watch yourself, Ardan. You're playing with fire." Later that night, Kara found Ardan pacing by the hearth, his face shadowed with worry. She touched his arm, her expression questioning. "What's wrong?" she asked softly. "Some of the villagers think you're a threat," he admitted. "They're scared of what they don't understand." Kara frowned, her hands clasping together tightly. "Leave." "No," Ardan said immediately. "I won't let them drive you away." She searched his face, her own resolve hardening. "I stay with you." Her words stirred something deep within him, a mix of pride, gratitude, and an unfamiliar warmth. He reached out, brushing a strand of her golden hair from her face. "We'll face this together." Kara nodded, her smile small but determined. The glow of the pendant between them brightened, a silent promise of the bond they shared. But neither of them knew how soon that bond would be tested. As the village's fears escalated into an act that would force Ardan and Kara to fight not only for their place but for each other, the tension reached its breaking point a week later. It began with a fire. Rek and a few others, emboldened by their fear and hatred, set ablaze one of the storage barns. They claimed it was Kara's doing, insisting they had seen her strange glow near the building earlier that evening. The flames consumed the barn quickly, casting a sinister light over the village. Kara and Ardan were at the forge when the angry mob approached, armed with torches and crude weapons. They surrounded the building, shouting accusations. "She's a danger to us all," Rek bellowed. "We won't let her bring ruin to our home." Kara stood behind Ardan, her expression a mixture of confusion and fear. "Did nothing," she whispered. "I know," Ardan said, gripping her hand. He stepped forward, raising his voice over the angry crowd. "This has gone too far. You've let your fear turn you into monsters," Rek sneered. And you've let her turn you blind. Open your eyes, Ardan. She doesn't belong here." "She belongs with me," Ardan said firmly, his voice unwavering. "She's done nothing but help this village. And if you'd stop listening to your fears, you'd see that." The mob hesitated, their anger flickering like the flames behind them. But before Rek could rally them again, a loud, resonant hum filled the air. The pendant around Kara's neck glowed brighter than ever, pulsing with energy. Kara stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Will prove, not harm, only help." She held her hands out, palms upward, as the pendant's light expanded, engulfing the crowd. The villagers gasped as their minds filled with visions, memories of Kara's acts of kindness, her efforts to create tools, her gentle interactions with the children who had dared to approach her. They saw the truth of her intentions, untainted by fear or prejudice. When the light faded, silence fell over the crowd. Many looked ashamed, avoiding Kara's gaze. Even Rek seemed shaken, his bravado crumbling. "I didn't know," one villager murmured. "None of us did," another added. Kara stepped closer, her glowing eyes filled with sadness. "Only want peace. Live together." Her words, simple but heartfelt, cut through the lingering tension. Ardan placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice soft but resolute. "She's not our enemy. She's our ally, our family." The villagers exchanged uncertain glances, but the anger had ebbed, replaced by something softer. Rek dropped his torch, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I was wrong," he admitted grudgingly. "Maybe she's not what I thought." The days that followed were a turning point. The fire was extinguished with Kara's help, her otherworldly ability proving invaluable. She worked tirelessly alongside the villagers, her actions speaking louder than any words. Slowly the walls of mistrust began to crumble. Villagers who had once avoided her now sought her out, curious about her culture and the glowing pendant she wore. Children laughed and played with her, fascinated by her gentle strength and the way she made mundane objects shine with her touch. Ardan watched the change with pride, his bond with Kara deepening with each passing day. They continued their work at the forge, crafting tools and ornaments that combined human practicality with alien beauty. The pieces became symbols of unity, a blending of two worlds. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Kara and Ardan stood on the hill overlooking the village. The pendant glowed faintly between them, its light a reflection of their connection. "Changed," Kara said, her voice thoughtful. "People better." "They just needed to see the truth," Ardan replied, his gaze fixed on her. "Sometimes fear blinds us to what's right in front of us." Kara tilted her head, a small smile playing on her lips. "You never fear?" He chuckled. "Oh, I was terrified. But losing you? That scared me more." She reached for his hand, the warmth of her touch grounding him. Not lose, always stay. The glow of the pendant brightened as if sealing her promise. Ardan leaned closer, pressing his forehead to hers, their breaths mingling in the cool night air. In that moment, under the vast expanse of stars, they knew they had found something rare, something worth fighting for. Together, they would build a future where fear gave way to understanding and love transcended the boundaries of worlds. And in the quiet harmony of that shared promise, they realized they were no longer just an alien and a human. They were partners, united by trust, love, and the simple truth that together they were stronger than any fear.